I'm Dr. James Haney, and we're talking to Dr. Astephens and Miss LWynn. Miss Wynn, before we had our break, we were talking about the impact of the Emancipation Proclamation. And I'd like to continue that discussion by talking about the extension of the Emancipation Proclamation. For example, during the 1970s, I think it was often inferred that President Lincoln was able to emancipate slaves only in those areas where he did not have the authority to do so. And perhaps you would like to say something about that.
That's very true. When the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on New Year's Day of 1863, it only applied to slaves who were under Confederate control or those who were in states of rebellion. For example, the whole state of Tennessee was omitted, as was parts of Virginia and Louisiana. So the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to slaves across the United States. I think when we go back and look at Lincoln in terms of his basic policy, he really believed in compensated emancipation. He had a 5-point plan which basically said that the states themselves must free the slaves. He believed in gradual emancipation. He felt that the slave owners should be compensated for the slaves that they were to lose. He felt that blacks should be colonized abroad and not kept here in the United States, and that the slavery should not be hurried. I mean, the end of slavery should not be hurried, but that states should be given plenty of time to do so, taking up going up as far as 1900 if it took that long. You know, so it really didn't apply, and there has been some question as to whether or not Lincoln even had the authority to apply the Emancipation Proclamation to states where he had no control. They had succeeded.
Now, in view of all of this information, how is it that the President was able to issue the proclamation, Dr. Stephens?
He was able to issue the proclamation on several things. Number one, public opinion in the North, the support of the black abolitionist movement in the United States, and that movement was very, very strong in that the AME Church, the AMEZ Church, and the Baptist churches, those three predominantly black-owned and controlled churches, had been organized immediately right after the Revolution. In fact, the AME Church was organized in 1787, at the same time that they were debating the United States Constitution in Annapolis and decided upon the 3/5 clause and the fact that in 1808 they would not have any more imports of slaves. So with these church groups organized, that was one of the things that he had to reckon with. Then it was a financial situation. As early as the 1833, when the British outlawed slavery, that broke the back on many of the slave importation concepts. And then many of the other countries followed suit in that. And for years, the United States had trouble trying to bring slaves from Africa because the British were taking the ships and impressing the seamen and so forth, and these are other crises. About 1849, the London Times started printing pamphlets dealing with articles that had been published in the United States that were abolitionist type. And these, the London Times, and eventually the Paris newspapers, Amsterdam newspapers, and others started publishing this, so there was a great sentiment in Europe. And then the cotton industry, which had much of its manufacturing in the Manchester area and down in Liverpool, which was a seaport area, they were greatly affected by the slave trade and also by the advancement of one of the major commodities, which was cotton. And they early thought about diversifying their agricultural inputs. There was a great amount of British money in the United States running. Many people forget that the United States was a former colony of Great Britain, and there was a lot of British money involved, so you had that element there. A fourth element was the stand on Russia in regard to slavery and serfdom, and the Tsar got rid of serfdom in Russia in 1861 without a revolution. Of course, that we eventually had a revolution in Russia around the end of the century. But that great sentiment in the United States and the sentiment of many of our so-called Western and European allies helped to pave the way for certain things that were happening. In 1848, we had the barn burners group, and we had a Free Soil Party, which died out, but we eventually had the New Republican Party, and starting in Ripon, Wisconsin, and then, of course, Lincoln becoming the standard bearer of that party and winning the election in 1860. With this election and also his running for the Senate, it was discovered that Lincoln perhaps was soft on the problem of freedom for blacks. And they tried to catch him, and say certain, but he always was able to get out of that. But when he was elected, there were several states who felt that now that this man is elected and he is the person who's against the South, then we need to do something. And of course, this is the bombing in Fort Sumter. And by the time Lincoln made his inaugural address, he had almost half of the southern states had already seceded from the Union. So he had a problem at that time of trying to bring the nation back into proper focus at his inaugural.
Very well. We'd like to thank both of you. I think we're just about running out of time, and we wish that we had more time to continue this discussion, but we'd like to thank both of you for coming by and shedding some light for the national community on this very, very important question of the Emancipation Proclamation. This is Dr. James Haney bidding you good night for Black Pulse.
To Black Pulse, a program designed to keep you aware of the concerns and events affecting our lives. Join us now as we take the pulse of the black community.